Welcome to the second day of the second weekend of Makeready. Thank you all for joining us this morning. And I am about to share just a few introductory remarks. My name's Tom Eichmans, and myself and Jamie Yen are the co-organizers of the Seattle Art Book Fair. So we're excited to bring this programming to you this year, which is a bit of a compromise over what we had originally planned, but we're still trying to make it happen. A few quick notes. Even though this is a virtual event, we'd like to acknowledge that the event was organized on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically the Duwamish tribe. We're grateful to and honor these communities, past, present, and future. We'd also like to wish a quick thank you to everyone who's donated to us through Give Big, to our advisors and volunteers, and to the Short Run Comics and Arts Festival, which have been great supporters and advisors as well, and hopefully to return in the near future in some form. We should acknowledge Shunpike for being our fiscal sponsors and For Culture for their support as well. And also a quick thank you to Julia Powers and Hart Boyd for their assistance in running this programming. This session is being recorded and screen captured, so if you don't want to appear on the video or in screenshots, please feel free to turn off your camera or change your display name. Please be respectful of participants' work and time, so don't record or screenshot any session without notification or their consent. And please mute yourself while you're not speaking. Live captions are available via the live transcript button that should be at the bottom of the Zoom toolbar. So today, Saturday, May 22nd, kicks off a whole slew of new programming again. It's starting off with Cold Cube Press this morning, followed by 3 more studio visits, a workshop, and office hours at the end of the day. So you can jump in and out of all of these. Hope to see you at other ones. And we'll start out with Cold Cube Press. So Cold Cube is a Risograph publishing and printing company based in Seattle. They specialize in art books, abstract comics, poetry, and everything in between. Each year they put out an anthology of artists from all over the world, working in a variety of mediums. So I'd like to turn it over to Aidan Fitzgerald and maybe Michael Heck. Aidan?
Hello. Thank you for the introduction and thanks for putting this all together. I'm really excited to do this. I am not in Seattle right now, but I was really excited to do a studio visit before I left Seattle. So I made a sort of short video that sort of describes what we have in our studio and a sort of brief overview of the printing process, as well as a sort of peek into a couple of our books. So it's just under 15 minutes long, and I am just going to share my screen with all of you. And then afterwards, I think Tom and I are going to do a little Q&A, and then we'll open it up to if you all have any questions as well.
Hello Cubers, and welcome to the Cold Cube Press studio. Our studio is located in sunny Seattle, Washington, in the Pioneer Square.
Hello Cubers.
Yes, hello. Let's meet the staff.
Hi, I'm Aidan.
Hi Aidan.
Hello, my name's Michael.
Hello Michael. Now let's meet some of the equipment that we use. We print on a Riso MZ1090 UI, which is a 2-drum risograph printer. First introduced in 2008, this puppy has seen a lot of, oh, here's a diagram. There's the paper input tray on the left, that's where the paper goes in. There's the print drum door and the scanning bed. Here's another view of the Riso. As you can see, the print drum is out. The control panel is on the top, and the paper output tray, where the prints come out, just like that, is on the right. Let's move on. Perhaps our most important item in the studio is our ElectroJog paper jogger. Jogging the paper is the process of shaking the print sheets so that dust and static electricity do not cause them to stick together. To use the parlance of our times, it is low-key the most important piece of equipment in our studio. Look at it go. This is the Plockmatic 60 Binder Maker Pro. This is an all-in-one booklet, stapler, and folder, which we use for our saddle-stitched books and zines. In this frame, we are binding the Combahee River Collective Statement, a publication we produced with Mutual Aid Books, a nonprofit mutual aid group here in Seattle. Cold Cube is a publication studio as well as a print studio. We publish artists from all over the world, but we also print for clients and arts organizations that want high-quality risograph printing and design expertise. With the Plockmatic 60 Binder Maker Pro, we can staple and fold hundreds of thousands of zines in a matter of months. Now that we've been introduced to the machinery, let's go through the process of making a print. Turn on that jiggler. Great job, Aidan. Next, Michael will prepare the printer with the proper print drums. Here, we see him taking out the print drums. Next, the cubers will discuss how the print would best be executed. Or maybe there's some sort of technical difficulty. Maybe they dropped something on the ground? Something. Oh, you know what? Here it is. They're looking for a specific print drum. The Riso prints one color at a time on corresponding print drums. So if you wanted to print something in yellow and purple, for instance, you would need to send separate files to the yellow print drum and the purple print drum. Here we see Aidan taking out the aqua drum and Michael placing in the orchid drum. Now close that door. Great job. Now Michael will load the mint drum into the second position. The Riso MZ1090 prints two colors at a time, as opposed to more older Riso models that only print one color at a time. Looks like we're ready to go. Once the paper has been jogged, Michael will load the paper into the paper input tray on the left of the Risograph. After the files have been sent from our Windows 7 operating system, we're ready to go. Set the print count and watch those babies fly. The Riso is an all-in-one digital duplicator, which mimics the process of traditional offset printing. It's sort of like a photocopier and a screen printer, all matched together. Now, let's take a look at what we're printing. Here's what we're printing: the final two colors of a sheet for a book called Moth Among Butterfly. Next up, here's the cover of that Combahee River Collective book I mentioned earlier that we put out with Seattle-based mutual aid group, Mutual Aid Books. Here's a poster we made with Sub Pop Recording Corporation Incorporated LLC for their recording artist Orville Peck. Next up, here's a shot of the covers for a book that we co-published with Vancouver-based powerhouse Dog. The book is called Tappy by the artist New. Here's a 3-color tour zine we produced for the music band Shannon and the Clams. Once printing is done, the cubers must collate the sheets of the book. Collating is the process of laying the print sheets out in order and then assembling them. For saddle stitch and perfect bound books, each sheet of paper has 4 pages of a book. So for this book, at 64 pages, there are 16 stacks of paper around the table that must be assembled. Michael and Aidan circumnavigate the table and then place the finished assembled books in a box. Let's take a look at the sheets. This is the book Moth Among Butterfly that we saw earlier. It's a collection of drawings and poems by Detroit-based artist Jordan Jackson. This book is printed in 4 colors: black, red, aqua, and yellow. The Riso prints 1 color at a time, unless you have a 2-drum printer, in which case it prints 2 colors at a time. What this means is that on print sheets, you have to print, say, the black and the yellow on every sheet at once, and then the red and the aqua on those same sheets later on. It's a complicated process, but I think we're getting the hang of it. Let's check out the studio. Here's our collection of books and a few other things. And here's our ink. A note about Risograph ink and Risograph printing in general. Riso ink is made from 100% biodegradable rice husk oil, preservatives, and pigment. The paper that we print on is made from 25% post-consumer waste, and the printer itself uses 90% less energy than a digital printer or offset press. So in other words, Risograph printing is the most ecologically sustainable form of printing we can do on such a small scale. Now that's what I call a great idea. Now let's get back to the cubers. They appear to still be collating. Here's our backstock. We started out with a small print run of books, about 100 copies. Now we print about 300 copies of each book and give 1/3 of that print run to the artists to sell on their own. Because we are not exactly an economic juggernaut, our artists can make money selling their books themselves and keep the profits. After recouping expenses and selling books wholesale, it works out that we split the profits 50-50 with our artists. Let's get back to the cubers. Oh, okay. Well, it appears that they are still collating. Sometimes it seems like all they do is collate, day in and day out. Anyway, let's get back to the books. Here's a shelf of some of our recent projects and some of our favorite books. Ooh. This is Transistor by Italian artist Francesco Morello. Transistor is a collection of risograph printed digital collages and paintings. Morello is primarily a digital artist and animator and uses maps and paintings as a jumping off point for his work. This book is printed in 4 colors: black, yellow, aqua, and fluorescent pink, mimicking the more traditional CMYK printing. You can buy it at our digital online internet web store. This is our best-selling book, The One Who Weeps by Spanish artist Cynthia Alfonso. This book is a long abstract comic ruminating on anxiety and loneliness. We published the book in the original Spanish as well as an English translation. The bright colors and dynamic compositions are perfect for risograph printing. This book is also available online, and we would love to send you one. This is our second book with Spanish artist Cynthia Alfonso, and we are very proud of our continuing relationship with our international artists. Next up, we have Foldable by Vancouver-based artist Huy Nguyen. Nguyen is Vietnamese-Canadian, and in this book, they explore cultural assimilation through linguistics, all filtered through their own visual language of mark making. There's an interview with them at the back of the book that goes more in depth into their process. It's a fascinating book, and unlike anything we've ever published before. One person at a book fair described the drawings as like trigonometry on LSD, and we kind of like that. It's available now. This book is called DC XXXL by New Jersey artist Michael Olivo. It is a collection of comics he put out with another press, LA-based Never Press, that were never collected into one volume. The book is a wild jaunt through the subconscious, wherein 3 detectives, born in the center of the earth, discover that their newly sentient police headquarters is a malicious force hell-bent on destroying everything around them. Except it's even weirder than that. I highly suggest this book. It's a wild read, and it has got some of the most amazing comics and cartooning that we've ever seen. It is also available on our digital web store. This is a print job we did for Seattle-based designer Andrew Niedermeyer called Glorious Internet. Before the pandemic, Andrew did a lot of traveling, and he used to document internet cafes all over the world wherever he went. This book is printed in 4 colors, and the photos came out pretty nicely, we think. The book is a collection of those photographs, a physical book of digital photos of built environments dedicated to the exploration of cyberspace. There's a lot of layers here. There's also no people. It's just internet cafes. It's glorious. This is a collection of prints by Seattle artist Aaron Halligan that we put out in 2020. We put this part in slow motion so you could really appreciate the beauty of these paintings. We did a limited release of this print set, but we look forward to publishing more print sets in the future. It is currently sold out. This is our 5th anthology. Every year, we put out a collection of artists from all over the world, working in a variety of mediums, but focusing mostly in comics and illustration. This book came out in 2019, and our 6th anthology is forthcoming this fall. We started Cold Cube in 2015 with the intention of just putting out anthologies, but we got carried away with publishing other books, and here we are. This is our newest book, Won't to Can't, by San Francisco cartoonists Ian McKay and Gavin Edwards. It's our most straightforward comic we've ever published, and we are very proud of it. The book is part 1 of a sprawling graphic novel about a megalomaniacal fitness guru who takes over a monastery/corporate juggernaut. There's a lot to unpack here. It is simultaneously an indictment of Amazon, religion, and fitness culture. Also, a lot of it rhymes. It's a wild book, and it is also available now on our internet web store. Anyway, let's check back in with the cubers. Oof, they are still collating. Anyway, let's skip the rest of the collating. Once the collating is done, it's important for the Cold Cube staff to relax and enjoy the finer things in life, like a miniature ping pong table. At Cold Cube, we think having fun is great. Well, I'm sorry we couldn't take up more of your time, but I think it's time to sign off now. As we say in the business, goodbye, cubers. Now, let's do a little Q&A.
That was fun.
That was excellent. And somehow like the internet connection making it kind of stuttered actually improved it in some ways. It felt like a
Oh, great
experience. Well,
that was intentional.
absolutely, yeah. And someone asked if it's going to be available online, and yes, it will. In fact, a lot of the studio visits that are part of this fair are going to be on our book fair website in the near future. And I'm sure if you want to put this on your own site at some point too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can jump into like a few little questions that I can ask, and then if everybody watching starts thinking of their own questions, feel free to put them in the chat or jump in at any point as well. But I'll start off with kind of like my own first introduction to what you guys do. When you guys were at the TK Artist Lofts building and shared a space with Mount Analog and Grandma Press.
Yeah.
Those kind of like magical years when you all overlapped in the space. And I'm curious how you found that space, how you got into risograph printing, how that all came together.
I first bought my first Riso printer in 2014 from a friend who got it off Craigslist, and they were just getting rid of it. But I was part of a free comics newspaper here in Seattle called Intruder that went from like 2012 to 2017 or so, or maybe earlier than that, or later than that. Anyway, I sort of got into comics and publishing through Intruder, and then when this friend was getting rid of a Riso, I kind of jumped on it. I didn't know really what it was, but I knew that I could print my own art books in my apartment. And so the Cold Cube studio started in my apartment, and then I got a sort of live work studio space a year after that. And then I would say probably 2 years after that, I was contacted by Colleen from Mount Analog, who had done a tour of those the open studio spaces in the TK lofts. And she and I had known each other. We probably met in 2015, and we put out a book together called, we put out a collection of poems and collages by a poet named Ted Powers. And she was nice enough to sort of give me a heads up that there was an open studio space. And then I couldn't afford the rent, so we decided to split it with another project, Grandma Poetry. And I was just talking about this yesterday with the Vancouver Comics Festival, sort of like talking about early days of starting a press. And for me and for Cold Cube, I think a huge part of sort of getting our press going was once you sort of start making books, you begin to meet other people that are making books. And the TK loft just came about from sort of those connections that I had made from making books. And it was such a huge privilege and such an amazing stroke of luck to get that. And it was kind of like a golden period. It was like a 3-year period. And running a gallery, publishing books and running a gallery was a lot. But you know, it definitely sort of lent an element of legitimacy to what we were doing. Because when you're making books in your apartment, then you're just a hobbyist. But as soon as you start paying rent somewhere else, then people are like, oh, wow, you're a publisher.
And Colleen Louise Berry is going to have a studio visit herself next Saturday at the same time at 10.
Yeah.
To see what she's been up to. One thing, especially considering your anthologies and some of the recent publications you've done with like artists that are national or even international, is how have you established like this network of creative people that are contributing to these anthologies, seemingly from like all over the world?
So Michael, my business partner, and I, we met through Short Run, and I actually met almost everybody that I know in the comics community in Seattle through Short Run. So they've really been the primordial ooze from which Cold Cube and I think Mount Analog and a lot of other groups sort of sprang out. But so I met a lot of people at Short Run, and then after starting Cold Cube, we would meet a lot of people at fairs. And so we sort of, there's that sort of natural in-person networking that you do at fairs. And then that coupled with me and Michael's history on Tumblr, and then getting Instagram in like 2015, we were sort of pulling from 3 different spots, I guess. We wanted to have a Pacific Northwest publisher that didn't just publish artists from Seattle and Portland. So we try to have all of our anthologies we try to have like, you know, Seattle, some Seattle folks or some Northwest folks, and then people from all over the country, and then people all over the world. And the international artists, especially, you know, a lot of them we kind of cold call them. We would send them an email or we'd send them a DM thinking, you know, they might say no, but you know, there's no wrong answers here. If we're like, hey, we'd love to publish you, and they say no, it's like, okay. So we kind of cast a wider net than we thought we would get back. And people started to say yes. And I think, you know, the more it's a snowball effect. The more, once we start publishing somebody down in like Mexico or in Spain, then they have their connections in those countries, and then more people know about us there. And then on a more local effect, or I guess not local, but national, once I started tabling at fairs in New York and Chicago and Los Angeles, not only were new people seeing our books, but I was seeing new artists. You know, a lot of Brooklyn artists don't come to Seattle because they never leave Brooklyn, but a lot, you know, like there's so many new artists that I would be introduced to from these fairs. Or I would see people and be like, oh, I know you from your handle and your Instagram, but now I know you're real name, and we would sort of collaborate from there.
So like a huge amount of work then goes into finding other artists, kind of curating the collections you're putting together, and then
Mm-hmm.
the logistical part of it of, laying out the pages and getting files and doing separations and all of that. How do you balance that against the actual production work that you're doing?
So yeah, I really appreciate that question, because I think a lot of people look at these books and they're like, oh wow, you just sort of take this drawing and make it into that, but there's so much work in the back end. For their anthologies, that now they typically have anywhere from like 17 to 30 contributors. We used to put them out for short run in November, and then there was a bunch of fairs after short run, and then we would take December off, and then like January 6th, which is a bad day, that's probably just stuck in my head. Let's say January 5th or January 7th, Michael and I would start working on the next one, and we would just send texts or screen caps back and forth and be like, oh, we like this person, or have you seen this, or here's this person that I met in New York. And so we start sort of assembling a list of people in January. We send out kind of like preliminary emails maybe a month or so after that. So we kind of work on the anthology all year. And that is a way to sort of stretch out the work. And I think that's sort of in line with more quote unquote traditional publishing of, you get a manuscript in 2015 and it hits shelves in, early 2018 kind of thing. But so we really try to, with the anthology, stretch out the work pretty far. And then in terms of like finding new artists and sort of staying on top of that, just internet and like Instagram wormholes, with more and more publishers coming up. I'm thinking of like Textbooks in New York, or Gaitha Press in Calgary, or different presses in Los Angeles or Chicago, like Shelf. I think Lucas and Austin had a talk yesterday. Seeing what friends are doing, or seeing what contemporaries are doing and who they're publishing, and then we kind of start snooping on them. We try not to like poach other people's artists, but it is a great way to sort of get exposed to other folks. But I think that, the double-edged sword of Instagram is that we make a lot of our sales through the platform, and the dark archangel Zuckerberg. But the positive of it is that we're always looking at new artists that are sort of coming along. But we've also slowed down our production since the pandemic. So thankfully, we're no longer putting out 10 books a year, because that was a lot.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like a necessary evil to be able to connect to everybody.
Yeah.
Not be able to otherwise. And even making something like this event possible, it's like there's a million kinds of technology that make this even possible. So I guess that's kind of amazing.
Yeah, it really is. I try to keep my screen time down, but in a sadistic way, I could write a lot of it off as like research. And I think that that's just, if you're a designer or you're an artist or an illustrator or cartoonist, you're working in primarily a visual medium. And like, I do freelance design, and I have gotten illustration jobs that it's, you trade on your follower count. That's like how it works.
Right. Do you have any like dream projects, things that you are looking forward to or aspiring to?
Yeah. So Michael and I, we started out making we kind of figured out how to print by printing our own work. And then after that, we sort of did a 180, and we decided not to do that. We thought that it was kind of like wearing your own band's t-shirt. But I think going forward, we're going to start, I'm hopefully going to be putting out a book of my own work later this year, and hopefully Michael will as well. So those are not necessarily dream projects as much as they're ones that like we've been kind of like meaning to do. We'll have like our, directors meeting, and it's always, the kind of bottom of it. And we're like, oh yeah, we got to do that. But yeah, I would say, God, my dreams are so like dreaming of like a healthy and happy book fair. Like that sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah, I think that, as Cold Cubits sort of evolved, and I think now that we're kind of slowing down a little bit, I'm working on maybe refocusing our attentions towards more of like, we're going to put out, instead of like a scattershot 10 books a year, I want to start putting out like the biggest and best anthology we can, and then maybe like 2 or 3 other books, to really kind of concentrate on I guess quality over quantity. Not that we didn't have quality before, but you know what I'm saying.
So like one of the challenges too, in addition to actually producing these books, is something that maybe touches on our kind of theme of the third weekend, which is after a book. So at some point you have all these books, you have to actually sell them somehow. How do you approach like actual order fulfillment and distribution and all that really boring after?
Yeah, the nuts and bolts of it. So we kind of come up with like a marketing plan with our artists before we put out the book. So basically we'll say like, who do you know? Who can we send this out to? Do you work with certain bookstores? Or do you have podcast friends that make podcasts? Or, do you know anybody at TCJ or Bubbles or, any of these other sort of small press review sites? And then after the book is finished, we try to send the books out to those folks that we sort of put on the spreadsheet. And then in terms of order fulfillment, this is that double-edged sword of Instagram is that if we keep on hyping something, we'll end up getting more orders. And right now I'm not in Seattle, so Michael is our mail lord. And he's sort of sending all the books out. But we do a sort of quarterly check-in with our wholesale accounts. And we have a couple bookstores that are really, really good to us. There's a bookstore in Philadelphia called Partners and Son that neither of us have ever been to. And there's The Beguiling in Toronto, Printed Matter in New York. A couple of like bookstores that are really have always really been like kind of on our team, and we'll check in with them once every 3 months to send wholesale books out. But our print runs have never really surpassed 300 books. And that number was kind of based around going to 6 or 7 large fairs a year. So LA Art Book Fair in the spring and New York Art Book Fair in the fall. We were doing maybe larger runs than we were when we were in my apartment, but we weren't doing such a large amount. It was sort of oriented around like, let's see if we can sell out of a book in 14 months, and keep the ball rolling. So that's been one of the challenges with the pandemic is we put out 2 books, that Transistor book by Francesco Morello and DC Triple XL by Michael Olivo. We put those out in January and February of 2020. Like, all right, we've got fairs coming up. Like we got these new books. We're gonna hustle them. And now we have them just kind of in our studio. So as far as distribution goes, I think that going forward, maybe there'll be art book fairs in 2022, and that will kind of reset things. But right now, we're kind of just sending emails out going like, do you want this? But it's been working, more or less.
Are there other ways that you've kind of managed through this past year? I know, especially when you're at the TK space, like having that monthly art walk, having people just walk through and discover work for the first time. And I think where you're at now in Pioneer Square, right? Like it's not that like public face anymore.
Yeah, so we are in the OK Hotel now, which is it truly is a windowless box that is not really available for First Thursdays. Not that we've even had an art walk in a while, but yeah, we did really depend on that First Thursday gallery space when we were in the bottom of the TK. And that was a huge boon to business. But with our new studio, it's over, I mean, we're paying much, much less rent. And the building itself, there's no sort of like walk-by traffic, but it is a much more secure building than the TK. And we've been, after both rounds of stimulus checks came in, it was like clockwork. It was like people got that stimmy, and then like a week later, we'd get an email that's like, "Hey, I have a 2-color book. Do you want to print it?" So we got a little bit of a business loan that sort of kept our heads above water for a little bit, and then we did a couple of print jobs that were pretty lucrative for us, just lucrative enough for me to leave town. We work with a manga publisher in Eugene called Glacier Bay, and they're an incredible publisher. They focus mostly on like independent manga from Japan that has never been translated into English before. And we printed a couple books with them, and we print their yearly anthology called Glaiolia. There's an A and an E and an O right next to each other, so I don't know how to say it. But those are the biggest books we've ever printed. I mean, we're like 364 pages, 400 copies. I mean, I'm just in the studio grinding on it for a while, but then that's a pretty significant chunk of change that then we can kind of float on for a little bit. That said, you know, I'm at my parents' house because I don't have to pay rent here right now. So it's enough to pay rent for the studio, but maybe not anywhere else.
Let's see if there's some comments coming in. Oh, Robert mentioned earlier, last week Brick Press up in Vancouver did a studio visit, and they shared their collation technique, which had like these vertically stacked mail slots almost, but they were staggered so that, and there were several next to each other, so somebody could just like flip down the different rows of sheets and collate like very quickly.
Wow.
In fact, I think there were like 2 sheets off at the same time.
Was it, it's not electric, it's like a...
No, it was just somebody walking back and forth, pulling 2 sheets off of these vertically stacked things.
Wow.
It was pretty impressive.
Okay.
I think they had like the little rubber fingertip things to...
Oh, like little thimbles?
Not doubling up. Mm-hmm.
Is it, that's interesting.
Oh, there's a video on Instagram.
Okay.
Collation technique. Don't worry,
cool.
It's on the case.
Thank you, Jackson. Jackson is the owner of one of our old Rizos. I hope that it's still working. We've gone through a couple machines in our career, and now we've settled on one of them. But yeah, collation is really, I listen to so many hours of podcasts while I'm collating. It's just like, it is literally just walking around a room. I mean, I would assume even with that contraption, it probably saves some time, but I'm sure they are still hours of just kind of walking back and forth.
Yeah, maybe it's actually healthy in some ways to slow down and do it the way.
It does. It breaks up printing a little bit. I mean, one of the reasons why I love running a publishing company is that it's sort of secretly a very physical act. I went to school for painting and used to like make sculpture and stuff like that. And I thought by going into comics and and publishing that I would kind of lose that physicality. But so much of printing is, you're lifting heavy boxes of paper, you're collating, there's a lot more movement, and collating is a big part of that. We drink a lot of LaCroix. I have a pretty intense LaCroix habit.
Yeah, it's almost, I mean, if it is a kind of exercise, you can't do anything else. You're just kind of doing it as a meditative exercise.
Yeah, and we have had books. I have had to uncollate books on a couple different occasions because, the sheets go 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And, my head is reading 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, but the actual sheets are like 1, 3, 5, 7, 10, and I just miss it. And then I go on, especially for like collections of drawing. I'm like, oh yeah, this is right.
Uh-huh.
And then I make the stack and I realize that I messed up. And so I have to go and sort of do them again. Those are really nice moments.
Let's see. Oh, Vanessa had a comment about the pandemic creating more writers and poets. I wonder if presses and literary journals could work together. New literary journals is like internet fever. Do you see opportunities for new kinds of collaboration that have come out of this?
Yeah, I do. I come from like a family of publishers, and my brother is a writer, so I have a little bit of a toe in that pond, and I do know that a lot of writers there's a lot more people that are sort of making that work, and I think that it seems like there's been a lot more sort of lit journals or publications that have been popping up. I do think that there's probably a lot more avenues for collaboration, but I think what's the most exciting thing about the collaborative aspect is that especially now that more and more people are kind of, I don't know, maybe publishing online, collaboration doesn't have to mean like, hey, do you want to come to my studio and staple with me? It can be, online galleries, or I'm trying to think of what's that, alt lit. Does anybody remember alt lit? Like when people would make websites and the poems were written on like different windows, and I went down that wormhole a little bit. And I feel like there's a lot of sort of fresh opportunity for that. There's also I feel like a lot more schools are getting into publishing, and a lot more schools have like art book programs. I was a guest speaker in one of Gretchen Bennett's classes. I think that's Gretchen over there. Hello, Gretchen. Good to see you. And she teaches an incredible class on art book making, or she was teaching one at Seattle University. And I know of a couple of art programs and design schools that are now sort of thinking about, art book making as a bookmaking and publishing as an actual form of expression, as opposed to like, oh, so you're making books now, that's interesting. Which is the response that I got, like 8 years ago or so.
Does anybody else have any last few questions as we wind this down? If not, I have a question that actually was asked yesterday, and so I'm going to borrow it. Can you think of any like really early books or artworks that kind of inspired you at like a young age that put you on this path of becoming a publisher yourself?
Yeah. I had a collection. I mean, I had a lot of Calvin and Hobbes and Far Side books when I was really young, which I think that they just kind of get dropped in people's houses. But somewhere along the lines, I got like a Winsor McCay collection, like a little Nemo collection. And that really kind of got me really juiced on comics. And I don't remember I know that he's in a dream world, but I don't remember reading any of those comics at all. I just remember looking at the drawings and like looking at the colors and like realizing that, oh, that orange is made from this red and that yellow. And I know it's kind of boring to talk about Winsor McCay like you know, it's so 2005 or whatever. But I do remember that book being very like impactful to me, and I literally don't think I read a single word of it. And then my brother, he put together a small press festival in Seattle called April. And I remember when we were younger, I think he was like, this is like, I don't know, maybe this is brother adulation or something, but I think we were drinking like hams at the Redwood, RIP. And he was like, there's no small press scene here. This sucks. All we have is pilot books, also RIP. And he's like, I'm just gonna make my own. And so he kind of like, it wasn't that simple. That's like legend or whatever, but he just kind of started this festival. And I was like, whatever, man, you just want to start a party. And he started it and it worked. And then when Kelly and Aaron and Martine Workman started Short Run, I remember them talking about it and it worked, you know? So I think seeing these people just kind of like pie in the sky, think about publishing and like putting readings together. And I want poets to meet drag queens, to meet designers. And then it worked. In 2015, when I started Cold Cube, I was like, oh, I think that this could work. And, you know, it was really helpful for me to sort of see that like almost 9 years ago now, which is pretty wild. I think Short Run would be on year 11 by now, I think.
10. I think it's their 10th anniversary, or would have been this year.
Wow.
But I know they've got all sorts of projects in the works, and they've been great supporters for us, as well as we're trying to do what you described, which is just invent a new event.
Yeah, if you build it, they will come, kind of thing.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Oh, 10th anniversary was last year. Thanks, Kelly.
Oh, hey, Kelly.
Are there any last questions, or Aidan, do you have any questions for the audience? I like it when people do that too.
No,
I see.
I guess not.
Vanessa also listed her own inspirations of Mad Magazine. That was a big one for me, as well as Far Side and Calvin and Hobbes.
Oh, hell yeah. Dreams
of Rare Fiend. I don't know that one. Crazy Cat, for sure.
Crazy Cat. I was interning at Fantagraphics. I interned at Fantagraphics in like 2012 or something. And they put me on PR, which is like the worst thing for me because you have to email people. But they were working on the Crazy Cat collections at the time, and I got to read them all. Ooh, so good. Incredible.
Oh, Dreams of Rarebit Fiend is also Winsor McKay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's why I recognize that name. It's not Lil Nemo, though.
No. I think a few years ago, they put out full-size Lil Nemo collections, like a 2-volume set, these giant books, and they're like tabloid size. And kind of like what you just, you can see the halftone patterns of the color screens, like at actual size. That's pretty.
And it's incredible. I think I saw them first in, I think my parents had the Smithsonian collection of, you know, Golden Age comic stuff. It was like a kind of an oversized book. It wasn't as big as those ones. Those are like those Taschen mega books that you take out a second mortgage to buy.
Yeah, they're massive. Well, if there aren't any other questions, maybe we can wind it down and get ready for the next studio session, which is going to be the Division of Design at the University of Washington. We'll have some projects to share and talk about what they do over there. But thank you so much, Aidan and Michael out there behind the scenes. And we really appreciate your time this morning to talk about all this.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been really great to be a part of this, and I'm looking forward to Seattle Art Book Fair IRL in years to come.
All right, thanks so much. If people are sticking around for the next studio visit, you can just stay in the Zoom. I'm going to mute everybody, and then we can take a quick break and come back a couple minutes after 11.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.